And welcome back. Do we want to add some fluoride to the water in Wichita? Well, some people say it's a pretty good idea and it will help with teeth of children in the city of Wichita. Other folks say no, that it's not a good idea, and the people that are against it oftentimes point to this Harvard study that has been talked about so much, and now we have an interesting, kind of an interesting about face in that thing, Ken, because even the scientists from the Harvard study say it's really not applicable because of some mitigating factors.
Yeah, one of the many main ones I think was, well, of course the study was that it lowers your IQ.
Yeah,
I think is what they were getting at here. But they also said that those fluoridation levels in these other countries that they were dealing with are much higher than anything we've got. That maybe even say Wichita is proposing.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And as you said, you know, people are so opposed to this. They think this is, if the government can do this or a government organization can do this, who knows what they can put in your water, what they might do to you. And the argument is, you know, you get fluoridation, you can get it in your toothpaste, or if you really need it, you can get it other ways too, and so on. You know, I grew up in western Kansas essentially, and it's been said there, I don't know, I have great teeth, I have very few cavities in my many years. And I think one of the reasons was they thought it was natural fluoridation there of the underground water. I don't know if that, I have never seen any results on that as that's been tested or not, but this fluoridation thing, you know, it cuts across a lot of things here. I think health, some people say it's not good for your health, wouldn't be good for your mind, your development. And as I said, there's the government option, the government possibility here of doing other things to you, and so on. So I don't know, you know, maybe Peter has some views on that, but.
We'll ask Peter's thoughts on that in just a second. But the Harvard study is interesting to me because, first of all, I think 25 out of 27 studies that they actually look for, that they compile for this, are from China.
Right.
They don't take into account a lot of other factors. For example, exposure to heavy metal pollution, poverty, things like that in China. They also said something that was interesting, that even if you looked at all of this, they said children had IQs about a point lower, and that actually changed. It didn't appear to last into adulthood, and that the intellectual ability, the effects on that is actually negligible, and that's what the study says.
Yeah, and I think I read some stories here recently that applied to Kansas, in which the dentists and the dental associations and so on said, you know, we've got a huge number of youngsters in this state who really have defective teeth. They have really great problems. Now, I don't know if that's because they're not getting proper dental attention. I suppose that's one major reason. The other maybe is, or maybe, you know, not taking care of their teeth, or not, they're eating too many sweets, or drinking soft drinks, you know, and all this can be damaging to your teeth. So, you know, it's very controversial. I don't know, I'd hate to predict how it's going to turn out, but boy, it's going to it'll raise quite a ruckus if we get it to the ballot.
We'll bring Peter in on this one. Now, Peter, this is an interesting topic to me because it goes beyond fluoride, I think. It goes way beyond fluoride. It goes to, I think, government trust or mistrust. A lot of the people that are arguing against it are saying exactly that. You know, the government's putting things in the water, it's mass medication, that kind of stuff. And it's really kind of a puzzler to me, to be real honest.
Yeah, I remember the 1960s movie Dr. Strangelove, where there was an Air Force general who only drank distilled water and pure grain alcohol because he thought the communists were trying to take over our bodily fluids. I'm not sure where that kind of sentiment comes from, except for, as you say, a sort of general distrust. I can tell you where the idea of fluoridation came from, I think, was that in the years immediately after World War II, during the post-war baby boom, all these babies were being born, and suddenly there was a school of thought that developed in this country that breastfeeding was primitive and unsanitary, and that in a modern, scientifically based world like we now live in, the proper way to raise your baby was on the scientifically derived baby formula that you came in a powder or a concentrated liquid, and you reconstitute it with tap water. As that trend spread across the United States, they started seeing children. There were certain kinds of nutrients in the baby formula that infants were not getting, and one of the ways they came up to address that was to fluoridate drinking water. And if you looked at studies back then, and maybe I don't know how rigorous the studies were, but there certainly were studies that said across a population base, fluoridated water reduced the level of dental problems, especially among children. We're now in an age where, thankfully, breastfeeding is back in fashion, so there are many fewer children being raised that way. I can tell you that my father, just so happens, was a chemist at a water treatment plant when I was growing up, and lived in a city that did, in fact, fluoridate its water. He was not in favor of it, but certainly not for any of the conspiracy theories or taking away your freedom reasons. His argument was very economic, that only a very small proportion of the water that you use in your home ever touches your teeth. The vast majority of the water that comes through your house is used to wash your clothes, to wash your dishes, to wash yourself, to bathe and shower, to flush your toilet, and to water your lawn. And maybe possibly, a little more than 5% of the water ever touches your teeth. And so his feeling was, if you want the benefits of fluoride, use a fluoride toothpaste. He wasn't against the concept of fluoride. He just thought if you take reasonably good care of your teeth, if you brush twice a day and use a fluoride toothpaste, you'll be fine. But unfortunately, there are a lot of households in our country where that's not necessarily possible. There are households who, for a variety of different reasons, there are a large number of children who are still raised being bottle fed on formula that's reconstituted with tap water. And so this issue comes up. I can tell you, I'm in my 50s now. I have lived my entire life in communities with fluoridated water. I don't feel as if any of my fundamental constitutional rights are being deprived as a result of that. I'll leave it to others to assess whether or not my IQ has been diminished as a result of it. I think that's, the jury's still out on that. But overall, it's been generally accepted in most communities in the United States. Wichita is an outlier. For some reason in Wichita, and I don't know if it's the political culture of that community or what it is, but Wichita has never taken kindly to the idea of fluoridating water, and I personally don't understand it. I don't live in Wichita, so I leave it to the good citizens
Peter,
there to make up their own minds.
Wichita's an outlier on a lot of things, right? I mean, politically and otherwise. But I know you said that. But there's some things I think I heard years ago, that Wichita was suffering, people here would not have the advantages of fluoridated water, and therefore, this is something that when you get older, your bones become more brittle if you don't have fluoridation. It affects that. I mean, is there anything to that? I'm not a medical doctor, and I haven't read much about this, but is there anything to that? And also, I'm curious, how does breastfeeding overcome the problem of non-fluoridated water?
I am not a doctor either. I'm also not a chemist. My dad was a chemist. I went into political science so I wouldn't have to deal with the math. So I can't speak to that. I just know this was kind of a trend that really hit American communities in the post-war era. And I don't know, I think a lot of communities are still doing it. I think I read about 70% of all public drinking water supplies fluoridate their water. The other 30% don't. And in areas like western Kansas, for example, where fluoride is practically in the air, it's not as necessary as it is in places like here in northeast Kansas and northwest Missouri, where we get our water from vastly different sources. And it just, seems to have a public health benefit that a lot of people swear by. But then there are communities like Wichita where there is just an indescribable amount of opposition to it, which I don't understand. But like I say, I leave it to the good people of Wichita to make an intelligent decision on their own.
All right. Well, we'll see how this all works out when the vote comes up. We do have to take another commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this federal recreational trails program that Kansas is opting out of. We'll be right back.